The Beatles are one of the most popular bands of all time. They've had many global, chart-topping hits across the globe, such as songs "She Loves You," "Strawberry Fields Forever," and "Come Together." Yet hardly anybody talks about "Tomorrow Never Knows," one of their most experimental tracks to date. What makes this song so complex and experimental is the avant-garde studio engineering going on during the creation of the song, as well as the Eastern influences brought in by George Harrison. As a musician, music is very important to me, and I believe understanding music is essential to the human experience. And most of the experimentation and studio engineering going on during this song is seen in songs today, so it's incredibly influential. To start off, we're going to go on the avant-garde studio engineering. So these influences were brought in via Lennon and McCartney, as they were very big into the London underground music scene that was experimenting with a lot of experimental music going on during about 1965, 1966. In the beginning of the song, you could hear a drum and bass groove going on, almost a very kind of a hypnotic, psychedelic kind of feeling, like it just loops over and over again, and that's because it does. One of the greatest influences of the avant-garde was the tape loops. So, for example, with the drum and the bass, they had recorded Paul playing his bass and Ringo playing his drum for half a measure of a tape, and then they'd cut it and they'd looped it for the rest of this about 2.5 minute song. So as you're listening to it, it is the same beat being played over and over again. Tape loops work, well, at least the tape loops, how they worked in the studio was documented by Paul McCartney. In Barry Miles' book from 1997, Paul McCartney, many years from now, McCartney was quoted as saying that we had played the faders, and just before you could tell it was a loop, you'd pull one of the other faders. We did a half random, half orchestrated playing of the things and recorded this to a track on the actual master tape. So as you can see, this is a tape machine right here. They would take tape off of on the header and then loop it in different places as to go around. So it's not just one tape that's going on; it's multiple tapes being laid over each other. This was very apparent within the. If you listen to the song, there's these somewhat seagull cries going on, which turns out was just Paul McCartney laughing in reverse and in a higher pitch due to this engineering. And halfway through the song, you can hear a guitar solo being played. However, like the sequel cries, it was played in reverse. Another thing that the studio engineering gave way to was the invention of ADT, automatic double tracking, which is described by Ian Vargo, a music producer and a mastering engineer from the Savannah College of Art and Design. He had said in 2014 that ADT was a process in which the signal from the sync head of one tape machine was delayed through a second tape machine. So, as Lennon was singing his track, the signal went to one machine and then went to a second machine. However, it was delayed and alteredly pitched in order to get. So it wasn't just a one singing track; it was multiple Lennon tracks being differently pitched and differently delayed, so you have this very full, thick sound. This technique has been used multiple times throughout the years, most prominently in "Smells Like Teen Spirit" by Nirvana. Going on to the Eastern musical influences, the origins of these, as you can see right here with George Harrison, he delved very deep into the Indian kind of Eastern music scene starting around 1965. Going back to the intro of the track, the very first thing you hear is this low rumble of some weird instrument that they've never used it before. It was a droning tambourine noise. And a tambourine was a stringed instrument that lays down a harmony, not unlike a guitar, but just a straight harmony. The biggest influence of Indian culture and musical techniques on this song was the inclusion of the pedal tone. And a pedal tone is an Eastern Indian technique that continues one harmony, one note, one chord. So unlike Western music, where it lays down on progression, this is just laid over one note. In order, the Beatles do implement their Western influences onto this song as well, within the Mixolydian type vocal melody going on, which is where it's a standard major scale, except you flatten the seventh note, which is seen in a lot of blues, rock, and jazz. Very Western music. Dominic Pedler, author of The Songwriting Secrets of the Beatles, said in 2003 of this vocal melody is an exotic Mixolydian type melody over a C root fifth, very common in Western music, drone that is neither major nor minor. Going on about this whole esoteric, somewhat experimental, just chaos of a song. So in conclusion, the studio engineering going on during the time gave way to the use of tape loops and the invention of automatic double tracking, and the Eastern influences brought in by Harrison going on within the instrumentation, and multiple influences throughout the song, such as the pedal dome. With this song, the tactics and influences used in the studio would go on to allow other musicians, such as like Pink Floyd or a lot of the indie rock scene of today, to experiment with these songs with no fear and to go with all of their intention. Thank you.